right. It is Friday. Time for some live chat on AI, and what an incredible week it has been. And I have to tell you, with everything that's happened this week, it's got me thinking, what's ahead? What's in the future? What's up next? Because the features and the capabilities, the intelligence of AI continues to grow at an incredible pace, doing new things that we didn't think were possible just a few months ago, quite honestly. And I want to take a time out and I want to think about, what does it look like for our future? And how does that involve what we're doing? What does that involve for you? Now, I know that many of you may not be interested in such a deep topic. You're probably more interested in the tech headlines, but I'm going to cover the space anyway because I really feel like there is a desperate need for people to put in context all of the changes that are happening around us. And so, if you're here to hang out, thanks for coming. I'm Daniel Lemire, founder of AI Mistakes, and I want to talk about the mistakes that we make in understanding the world around us. But more importantly, what I want to talk about is how we can learn from those mistakes and use the power of AI to our advantage. You see, we're in a new era now, and AI is making things possible that we never imagined. So, I want to help you get prepared. I want to help you think through what this continuous change means for you, your family, your work, all of the things around you. And so, I'm going to cover that in detail in today's discussion. So, let's just jump into it and start understanding, what does it mean to be a part of your own future, to think about what's next. Okay, so we have to start with the quintessential question. What about AI and humanity? Look, if you sit down and you have a chat with a large language model, one of the very large foundation models, and you bring up this topic of AI and humanity, you get all sorts of interesting answers. And as we focus our energy on what it means to really ponder our existence, it's not enough to simply have that dialogue with AI. We have to really understand what it means. We need to think deeply about what we're doing in our lives and how we're addressing the needs of those around us. I think many people are overly concerned that AI is going to destroy humanity. And I think that that's pretty unlikely, if I'm honest. But we do have to grapple with this question. What does it mean to consider humanity in the context of AI? I mean, we've had people imagining these scenarios for years. In fact, from the very early days of the genesis of machines that could calculate or think, depending on how you want to look at it, they were asking these questions. What does it mean for a machine to be making a decision? And how does that play against humanity, controlling the lives of people? One of my most favorite authors, Isaac Asimov, wrote into his storyline this entire idea of what it means for a machine to make a decision, and perhaps life and death decisions. And what does that mean for society, or perhaps even the universe as we spread out into the stars? And there are people that are actively chasing that dream today. And I think it's important for us to have spent a little bit of time thinking about it and pondering our own existence. Now, for me, that journey looks like thinking about what I want to do with my own life. I love the idea of control. I like this idea that I have some involvement in what's going to happen in the future. And that got me really thinking more deeply. What does it mean to have control? What do we mean by controlling the future or wielding our own power? When we think about the future, oftentimes we choose all or nothing scenarios. It's not uncommon for people to simply imagine the AI taking over and having a great deal of concern. But how often do we think about the opposing scenario, where we simply decide that we don't need the AI to make our lives better. Of course, it's easier when we let the machine do the thinking, but is that really better? Is that the right way to wield this technology? Is it most meaningful to us when we are using the AI to make life easier or perhaps to hand off some decisions? I think there are some real quagmires in the way that we are already entertaining the use of AI. When we talk about this idea of will AI control the future, we are really talking about this concept of agency. And I think that's particularly relevant given the proliferation of the nomenclature AI agent. We use that terminology because ultimately we're giving the AI the ability, the agency to make a decision. And we can choose to abdicate those choices to a machine. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. But I think it's a foregone conclusion that some will, in fact, choose to do that. In fact, there is very, very common precedent for that. We may not think about it in those terms, but we are surrounded by AI decision making. Your watching this video tonight perhaps could have a lot to do with an algorithm abdicating the choice of what to put in front of you. Now, ultimately, there is a human behind the creation of that algorithm. So, is that really the machine's decision? Did the algorithm make you click on the thumbnail to watch the video? Perhaps not. You ultimately have the agency to decide, are you going to watch it at any given time? And hopefully, we don't abdicate those decisions. We're always giving ourselves an off switch. But what does it mean to consider that off switch as it pertains to AI and our participation in the world? You see, the more I think about it, the more I realize that humans really do have an off switch. And the off switch is our decision to do something, our decision to maintain the agency. For many years, a common phrase that my dad would share with me is simply saying, not to decide is to decide. I think that is ultimately the decision that we're faced with. Are you going to deliver for yourself the agency, or are you simply going to abdicate that control? Either way, the decision is yours. So let's talk into this a little bit more. There are different places where we have this idea of control. And I think that these are the critical places that folks are often asking about. What's next? What's going to happen, right? The first of these, inevitably, with where we are today with AI, is your daily life, right? You go through life. You sit down on the couch to watch an episode of your favorite program on Netflix. And Netflix is making recommendations for that next program based on your behaviors. There is absolutely an element of AI. Can we even imagine daily life now without it? But let me flip the coin on you. Can you imagine daily life without you? You see, it turns the problem on its head. We're all so consumed and concerned about with what AI is going to do tomorrow, and does that involve us? How does it impact us? But every day we have a choice to take action on the things that matter to us. And if you're not doing that, that is essentially realizing daily life without you. If you're just showing up and going through the motions, that's daily life without you. In fact, that's daily life without your engagement. I think the worst thing that we can do to ourselves is go through life without living in the moment and attaching ourselves to the reality that we are in. We get so consumed by the digital things that are in front of us, the screens, whether it's watching video on social media, whether it's reading about the latest news. There are very many things to get lost in. And I think there is some amount of healthiness in separating yourself from reality for moments at a time. But I start to get concerned when we do that on a more permanent basis. But that daily life engagement is not the end. There's actually quite a bit more that we have to talk about, and I think we got to talk about the job situation. And there are many of you out there that are going through a challenging time because you might find yourself in a transition where you are leaving one job and setting yourself up for another. Now, it's easy to blame others, but I think we need to consider, what about the choices that we're making every day? It is absolutely possible for you to go through the motions and wait until somebody else decides that that job that you're doing is going to change. And you ultimately have that decision. When we ask, is my job going to be automated? I think there's a much deeper question that we should be asking instead, because we need to put it on ourselves. We need to be thinking deeply about what it is that I need to do. In fact, when we talk about technology and the way that it impacts our lives or changes what we do fundamentally, we are giving away our agency and putting AI in the driver's seat. And I think that that is the mistake that we make. So let's go a little bit deeper, because when you think about the actions that you can take, there's a lot of possibilities there. And AI actually can be one of those for you. And I think that that's ultimately where we take the conversation as a society. Do we think giving a single human a decision is better? Or do we think that there is some role, some separation, some value that comes from letting the machine do all of the calculation and make the decisions that have to be made? That is ultimately where Isaac Asimov took his storyline, and I don't want to give away the series, so I won't mention specifically what series it is that he wrote this in, but I do see a certain amount of brilliance in thinking about, what does it look like for a society to abdicate those decision-making opportunities and give a machine control over deciding for the good of society exactly how things should work. That is a decision that we have. Now, we also have a continuum that is completely human and that is completely AI. And we get to decide where in that continuum we want to exist across our own lives, through our work, and out to society. But if you can imagine what it looks like without a human being in that, the best example is imagining that without you. And my hope is that when you begin to think about the world without you, that gives you an entirely different lens and perspective on the questions that we're asking about our existence and the future, what that looks like for you in a world where AI becomes ever more brilliant and intelligent and ever more capable in doing the things that we want it to do. It is likely not the best decision to simply give up that agency to something, even if it is more intelligent. That may not be the best outcome, but it's ultimately up to you to ponder that. So, what I want to leave you with as we are having this discussion is really thinking deeply about the future, really considering, what is it that you do to deal with this question? How do you think about your future? When we ask the question about AI and the future, you have to put yourself in that position. And I think it is becoming increasingly important for you to be a person of vision with AI. In fact, many, many months ago, when I started to ponder this concept of AI, one of the things that I quickly realized was that it's really not about the AI, it's really about you and the decisions that you are making. That is the control that we have. In fact, not only is that the control that we have a responsibility to think about what we want the future to look like and then to do things to make that happen. So let's start with that first idea, where you fit in that equation. Sometimes it seems a bit silly to say, start believing in yourself. But I think oftentimes when we think about the future, there is a lack of understanding of the role that we play in that. And I've grappled with this on many different levels as an individual. I went through a job transition journey myself here within the last couple of years, and I've done a lot of reflecting on that. I've also done a lot of prayerful consideration. Where do I fit? There is this idea presented in the Lord's Prayer by Christ in the Bible. He is expressing this idea of not my will, but your will, Father, and giving up that control. And I do think there is a time and a place for giving up that control, but I don't believe it is your entire life. In fact, I increasingly believe from the reading and the learning that I do of reading the scriptures that there is very much a joint decision that is made. You have that decision to make. Now, you are working with those around you, but the very first step is to believe in yourself and to take under your own agency. Yes, this is something that I can do. And then to ask for help in making that happen. I know for me in my own personal journey, I have asked for that help and it has appeared. Now, without getting too deep into the philosophical or perhaps the theological, I do think there is a core need for each of us to start with that critical belief that you can do it, that there are things that are possible. Ultimately, I think that's how we got AI in the first place. But this is the foundation that I believe you have to build on. But it's much more than believing in yourself. That is a necessary thought experiment, but it leaves you without action. And that's why we have to talk about taking action. You see, I love to learn. And in fact, one of the big reasons that I started AI Mistakes was to help everyone else learn some of the great things that I'm experiencing. I've had people in my past consistently say, you know, an awful lot, but you're not sharing it. And so that's what I'm here doing, taking action against something. You see, it wasn't necessarily my idea to get out here and share these details on the great wide world web. But I took action on what others told me I needed to do. And I've been exploring that. Making the mistakes in creating these videos is an essential step for me in learning. And I use AI throughout my day in many different ways. And so that became a very logical next step for me. That taking action has actually worked its way into everything that I think about as it pertains to AI mistakes. If you're not sure what to do something. So often we get caught in this infinite loop of considering and learning and thinking about what to do next instead of actually taking action. So this one is really speaking to myself as much as it is speaking to you. I think it is absolutely essential to find a thing to do and get after it. And if you're not sure what thing to do, well, we have AI that can help us make a decision or consider the options that are available. In fact, increasingly, that is what I am doing with AI. I'm not asking for the AI to decide for me. I'm asking for it to propose some options that I can consider. It's kind of funny because in most cases, I don't take any of the options that the AI is giving me, and that is its own double edged sword. It is kind of funny that one of the mindset blocks that I've had and that I continue to have, if I'm honest, is feeling that AI is cheating. Like using AI to get something done feels like cheating. It's too easy. There's no effort involved by typing in a prompt and having it spit out some incredible knowledge that is well researched. One of my favorite features right now is using the deep research capabilities across multiple different AI tools. And lately, I'm taking the same question and trying it out across the different tools to benchmark them, to make decisions about what I think is the best tool at any given time. But through taking that action and trying it across many different AI tools, it's providing me with more choices and ideation so that I can make a decision and take action that I believe is the most effective. Because it really does come back to what you believe. what you believe is the right course of action, then trying it out and then learning from what transpires when you do that. But we cannot forget the humans that are involved. And this is absolutely a statement that comes from what I've learned in my faith walk. If we're considering the other people, we're doing things to help them. And I think this is probably the most core lesson that I've learned in my career doing a job. Getting the ability to understand what somebody else needs. Really loving someone is a part of understanding them. And a big part of that is understanding what they need. We all have something that we need, whether it is as simple or fundamental as a drink of water or a plate of food. We have needs, and providing for those needs, I think, is one of the many definitions of love. And so when we think about what it means to use I think we have to keep the humans at the center of it. And the way that we do that is to love our neighbor and really deeply ask questions and try to understand what the people around us are in need of. Sometimes that is empathy and compassion. Sometimes it's getting your hands dirty and working directly with someone. Sometimes it's sharing a kernel of wisdom, those things that you've learned. Maybe it's sharing those mistakes that you've made so the other person can benefit from them without having to make them on their own. But I think it really does come down to considering those other people around you. And that means that everything that we do has to be attached to the humans. You can never fully separate as much as you'd like to with designing systems and using advanced computing capabilities. It's all because of us. And to get theological again, I have to be honest, I really see that the universe is the way the universe was made in order for us to be here having this very conversation. Yes, that is a bit egotistical, I will admit, but it also means that our being here is about being humans, and we can never forget that no matter what we do with technology. It is keeping us and our relationship with each other at the center that I think is absolutely essential to the future for yourself and for AI. But we can't stop there because we are going to make mistakes along the way. And I keep coming back to this because it's how we learn. Going back to the very early days of your existence as a human, almost every parent that has had the opportunity to observe their children grow up talk about this moment when you take that first step. Whether that step is successful or whether you fall down and have to try again, you learn from that experience. The success does teach us things, but the failure often teaches us far more because we're able to focus on that moment when we didn't win, when we didn't get that thing that we most wanted. And progress means giving ourselves permission to try out things that we might not be able to do because there are two outcomes that happen. Either you win or you learn. And it is that quintessential mindset of try again when you fail, but then take note when you succeed that allows us to do absolutely incredible things. So often I'm surprised and delighted by the capabilities in these AI tools that we use. And I don't get that experience if I don't try it out. Yes, someone had to put in the effort to figure out what to do and what was possible with that AI model. But ultimately, you and I have to try it out and experiment with it. It is this idea of experiments, I think, that is also quintessential to our future success and how we got here. I have a whole collection of post it notes above my desk to remind me of those things that I need to do throughout the day to put my mind in the right place. And one of those post it notes is the question: what experiments are you doing? If you're not trying something that you don't know the outcome toward, you're probably not doing enough to stretch yourself. And it is through the stretching and the trial of things that we are able to discover incredible new things. At one point, someone sat down with an idea and they tried it out to see where it would go. That's how we got these complicated large language models. Someone thought, what would happen if I took all of this information and threw it into a mathematical algorithm? What would it do? What would the outcome be? They tried it out. Everything around us at some point was an idea that someone had the persistence to try and pursue. And I know that everyone has ideas that are worth pursuing. They may not all turn out well, but that's where the try again comes in. Do it, try it out. And if it doesn't work, try it again. You might learn something from that mistake. And so you make some slight changes to what you're going to do, but ultimately you're persistent. So often, our experience is to try it once and decide that it's no longer worth pursuing. And that is something that we must avoid at all costs. If it's worth doing once, it's worth trying again. And never forget that that's an opportunity for you. And the last point that I want to leave you with, yes, the scripture absolutely is playing a role in the thoughts that I have as I'm thinking about AI, because I do believe that these things are inextricable. What informs our knowledge of the world comes from many places. And I absolutely believe that our reflection, our contemplation, our investigation and research into the human existence is inextricably tied to the words that we share with others. Even before we had written language, it was through shared experience, that transmutation of the transporting of knowledge from one person to another through storytelling. The scripture is ultimately the capture of that knowledge in written form to be shared in a more convenient format. And now we have AI. One of my more favorite use cases for AI is discovering more and learning about scripture. Many of the scriptures were written first in a particular language, and you can look that information up and understand it, and you can seek to familiarize yourself with that original language by researching it. Large language models are incredibly good at language, and so getting deeper and understanding the real meaning in those words, I think, is a really great resource. But don't stop there, because it is those humans around us that are a great resource for us. It is those humans around us that we can have a conversation with. I want to have a conversation with you. In fact, if you're watching live right now, I definitely want to invite you to drop a comment about your thoughts. How are you receiving this? Is this resonating with you? Are you finding any value in the knowledge that I'm sharing in the conversation that we're having? See, we're using the technology to talk across great distances, or perhaps small. If you're in my neighborhood, I doubt my neighbor across the street is watching the YouTube broadcast right now, but you never know. And with this technology, that's now possible. But we have this opportunity with each other to have a dialogue and to explore. And I want to call upon you and encourage you to reach out to those people that are around you to find and discover those places where there is an opportunity for growth. And look, if you're watching the program right now, you're learning about AI, you're thinking about it. It's likely not the first time you've come across the channel, but if it is, thanks for joining. I'd love to get your feedback. Give me a like and a subscribe if you haven't already, but then go talk to your neighbor. Start up a conversation about AI. I think the exploration of these questions is also a critical part of our experience in life. And so I want to encourage you to take action and to use all of those resources, whether they are computers or people or even the knowledge that's available in books. And if you're not reading books on a regular basis, if you're letting social media drive your experience, that is not using all of your resources. And listen, you've seen me on the program here use social media on many occasions. I use it to discover the latest and greatest in AI. That has a time and a place too. Just be sure that you're not introducing bias into your life by filtering too much through one source of wisdom. So, what's next? Well, I think It's all about the experiments. All about the experiments. The opportunity to learn from mistakes with AI is incredible, and I'm gonna end it with the go make some mistakes, but let's hang out for a little bit. For those of you that have joined online, I think, I wanna do a little bit of sharing. We've got several different, social avenues to have the discussion, and I've got my good friend Tyler, has joined us. He's shared a great comment. Let's talk about it for a minute. The human factor at the center of AI. Man, I never really thought about it that way, Tyler, being the center of the AI. I mean, there's not literal A and I letters in the word human, but no, that really is the center of AI. All of this is here because we are. So much value can be reaped by just contemplating. Like, we type things in to that chat session, and that drives our thoughts. And I think the biggest mistake that we can make with AI is to just take whatever it gives us as the answer. It might very well be the right answer, but I think we need to engage. If you're going to take the time to type in your thoughts and have that conversation, really think deeply for yourself. I love that. Just this idea of putting yourself in the center of it and trying to make those connections is so incredibly valuable. So thanks for your comment. Thanks for watching and joining tonight. I really love to talk about AI. There's a lot of amazing things that have happened this week. In fact, I got to be honest, so many amazing things this week that I just couldn't resist this question, being able to create art like never before. And one of the sessions I had with an AI conversation earlier this week was thinking about this creative journey that we're on and asking the question, like, okay, well, if AI can create imagery like this, does my creativity even matter? Right? Pondering those big questions, searching for the answer and not taking it at face value is how we make ourselves better. And if you think about what the world would be like without you and without AI, and understand where do you want to draw that line, I think you get a lot more clarity on where you should be in the world and how you should be participating in that. So I think we'll leave it there. Go make some mistakes. Go be a human. We'll see you next time on AI Mistakes. Have a great week.